The stars looked different from the bridge of the battleship. Admiral Soren Valdez stared at them through the cracked view screen as warning alarms blared around him. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, but he paid it no attention. His ship, once the pride of the Arcturian fleet, now limped through space with failing engines and breached hull sections. "Status report," Soren said, his voice steady despite everything. Commander Ellis wiped soot from her console before answering. "Not good, sir. Life support at 40%. Engines barely holding. We lost the Defender and the Guardian. The Sentinel. Seriously gone. We're the only ship that made it out." Soren closed his eyes briefly. 4,000 crew members lost in an instant. The Void Dominion had struck again, and once more, the Alliance had failed to stop them. "Set course for the nearest friendly outpost," he ordered. "We need to warn them." Ellis looked up, her face grim. "Sir, there are no friendly outposts left in this sector. The Dominion has taken everything. For 30 years, the Void Dominion had spread across the galaxy like a disease. They weren't like other enemies the Alliance had faced. They didn't want resources or territory or power. They wanted to consume. Their black ships moved in perfect unison, directed by a single hive mind consciousness. They didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. They simply absorbed everything in their path. "Then set course for the border regions," Soren said after a moment. "Maybe we can find help there." Far away on the third planet of a yellow star system, Captain Olivia Martinez stood on a beach and watched the sunset. Earth looked peaceful from here. The orange light reflected off the water, and seagulls flew overhead. It was hard to believe that just beyond their solar system, a war raged that threatened all sentient life. Her communicator buzzed. Olivia sighed and answered it. "Captain, we've detected an unauthorized ship entering our outer defense perimeter," said the voice of her first officer, Lieutenant Ben Clark. "Hostile?" she asked, immediately alert. "Unknown. It's badly damaged. Doesn't match any Earth vessel design." Olivia was already walking to her car. "I'm on my way to base. Maintain distance, but keep tracking it. If it makes any aggressive moves, you are authorized to disable it." The Constellation was ready for launch when Olivia arrived at the spaceport. Her crew worked efficiently, preparing the ship without needing detailed instructions. They had served together for 3 years and knew their jobs well. "The unknown vessel has dropped out of faster-than-light travel," Ben reported as Olivia took her captain's chair. "It's drifting now, sir. Looks like their engines failed." Olivia studied the image on the main screen. The ship was unlike anything she had seen before. Its hull was silver with blue markings, now scarred by what looked like weapons fire. Parts of it were simply missing, as if torn away by giant hands. "Life signs?" she asked. "Faint readings. Their life support is failing." Olivia made her decision quickly. "Move us alongside. Prepare medical teams and security. We're going to help them." The United Earth Council had strict rules about contact with alien species. Humanity had developed faster-than-light travel 50 years ago and established colonies on several nearby planets. They had encountered other intelligent species and knew about the Galactic Alliance. But Earth had chosen to remain independent, watching the galaxy from a distance rather than joining in its politics. But Olivia couldn't leave anyone to die, no matter what the rules said. The alien ship looked even worse up close. The Constellation's docking tube connected with difficulty to the damaged airlock. Olivia led the boarding party herself, accompanied by Medical Officer Dr. Frank Wilson and Security Chief Lisa Ramirez. The air inside the alien ship was thin and cold. Emergency lights cast red shadows across twisted metal. Bodies lay in the corridors, members of species Olivia had never seen before. "Some of these people are still alive," Frank said, kneeling beside a fallen crew member with blue skin and 4 arms. "But they're in bad shape." They found Admiral Soren Valdez on the bridge, still in his command chair. He looked almost human, except for the silver patterns on his skin and his eyes, which had no whites, just large purple irises. He was conscious but weak. "You're human?" he asked when he saw Olivia. "Yes. I'm Captain Olivia Martinez of the Earth Defense Fleet. We're here to help you." Soren tried to sit up straighter. The Void Dominion. They're coming. You must warn your people. The Void Dominion? What is that? The end of everything, Soren said, his voice fading. Unless someone can stop them. Over the next few days, as the survivors recovered in the Constellation's medical bay, Olivia learned the full story. The Galactic Alliance had been fighting the Void Dominion for decades and losing badly. The Dominion consumed everything in its path, adding the knowledge and abilities of conquered species to its hive mind. We've lost almost 70% of Alliance territory, Commander Ellis explained, showing Olivia a star map. Hundreds of worlds, billions of people, and now they're heading this way. Ellis nodded grimly. We estimate they'll reach your solar system within 18 months, unless something changes. Olivia knew she should take this information to the Earth Council immediately, but she also knew what they would say. Earth had stayed out of galactic affairs for good reason. They weren't ready for a war on this scale. But as she looked at the faces of the survivors, people who had lost their homes, their families, their entire worlds, she knew that staying neutral was no longer an option. The Void Dominion wouldn't respect Earth's independence. They would consume humanity just like they had consumed so many others. That night, Olivia made a call to an old friend, Director Gregory Winters of Earth Defense Intelligence. Greg, I need a favor, she said, and it can't go through official channels. That doesn't sound good, Liv, Greg replied. What have you gotten yourself into? Something big. I have refugees from the Galactic Alliance on my ship. They're running from something terrible. There was silence on the line then. Bring them to the Sierra Nevada facility, quietly. I'll meet you there. As the constellation changed course for Earth, Olivia looked out at the stars. They seemed colder now, hiding threats she had never imagined. Humanity had thought itself safe in its small corner of the galaxy. That illusion was about to be shattered. What no one yet realized was that humanity possessed something unique, something that might change everything. In their isolation, humans had developed technologies and strategies that the Galactic Alliance had never considered, ways of thinking that the Void Dominion had never encountered. When all seemed lost, humanity would arrive, and the tide of war would begin to turn. The Sierra Nevada facility buzzed with activity. What had once been a quiet research base was now the center of Earth's response to a threat most humans didn't even know existed. Director Gregory Winters paced the length of the conference room, pausing occasionally to look at the star maps projected on the wall. So you're telling me that this Void Dominion has destroyed most of the Galactic Alliance, and now they're heading our way? He asked. Captain Olivia Martinez nodded. According to Admiral Valdez and the other survivors, yes, they'll reach our solar system in about 18 months. Greg ran a hand through his gray hair. And the Council still wants to keep this quiet? We should be warning people, preparing them. The Council is afraid of causing panic, Olivia said. They think we might have time to find a diplomatic solution. Admiral Valdez, who sat at the table with Commander Ellis and the other Alliance survivors, made a sound that might have been a laugh. There is no diplomacy with the Dominion. They don't talk, they don't negotiate. They consume. The door opened, and Dr. Natalie Reeves entered. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes, but excited. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, she had been studying the Alliance refugees since their arrival. I think I found something, she said, placing a tablet on the table. It's about the Dominion's hive mind. Everyone leaned forward as Natalie brought up scans and data on the main screen. The Void Dominion's strength comes from their connected consciousness, she explained. They think and act as one entity, but that may also be their weakness. She showed them brain scans of a captured Dominion drone that had been found on the Alliance ship. Their neural patterns are synchronized by a specific type of energy field, and here's the interesting part. This field is disrupted by a certain frequency of electromagnetic radiation. Greg frowned. What kind of frequency? That's the amazing thing, Natalie said, her eyes bright. It's a frequency that our military communications have been using for centuries. It's the standard bandwidth for our radar systems, our ships, even our handheld communicators. Silence fell over the room as everyone absorbed this information. Are you saying Olivia asked slowly. That our technology naturally disrupts their hive mind? Exactly, Natalie nodded. The Alliance never developed along these lines. Their communications technology uses completely different principles. But our systems, developed in isolation from galactic standards, might be the key to fighting the Dominion. Admiral Valdez stood up, his purple eyes wide. This could change everything. If we could weaponize this frequency, create devices that broadcast it at high power, we could break their connection, Commander Ellis finished. Turn their unified fleet into confused individual ships. Greg turned to look out the window at the mountains beyond. We need to take this to the full council. Now. The United Earth? Council chamber was rarely filled to capacity, but today every seat was taken. Representatives from all Earth nations and colony worlds listened as Director Winters presented the findings. The threat is real, he concluded, and time is limited. But thanks to Dr. Reeves's discovery, we might have a chance. The council president, Carla Jackson, looked grave. What exactly are you proposing, Director? Admiral Keith Blackwood of the Earth Defense Fleet stood up. Tall and imposing, he commanded respect even from those who disagreed with him. A proactive defense, he said firmly. We retrofit our ships with modified EM pulse weapons based on Dr. Reeves's findings. Then we take the fight to the Dominion before they reach our system. Murmurs filled the chamber. A representative from Mars Colony spoke up. You want us to join a galactic war? We've stayed neutral for 50 years. Neutrality is no longer an option, Admiral Blackwood replied. The Dominion doesn't care about our political stance. They will come for us regardless. We didn't join this fight, but we're about to finish it. The debate raged for hours. Some council members wanted to strengthen Earth's defenses and wait. Others suggested evacuating to unexplored regions of space. A few even proposed trying to communicate with the Dominion, despite Admiral Valdez's warnings. In the end, President Jackson called for a vote. The result was closer than anyone had expected, but the decision was made. Earth would fight. Lieutenant Amanda Fuller didn't expect to become a diplomat. As a tactical officer on the fast scout ship Falcon, her job was to analyze enemy movements and plan attack strategies. But now she found herself standing before the remaining leaders of the Alliance worlds, trying to convince them to trust humanity. We understand your hesitation, she said to the assembled aliens. Earth has kept its distance from Alliance affairs. But this threat concerns us all, and we believe we've found a way to fight back. The Centauri delegate, a tall being with 4 arms and iridescent skin, looked skeptical. Your species has no experience in galactic warfare. What could you possibly offer that our combined forces haven't already tried? Amanda activated the holographic display, showing the test results from Earth's labs. A new weapon, one that targets the Dominion's unique biology and disrupts their hive-mind connection. As the data scrolled across the screen, the mood in the chamber shifted from doubt to cautious hope. Meanwhile, Commander Daniel Peterson worked in the shadows. His team of intelligence operatives had spread throughout what remained of Alliance space, gathering information on Dominion movements, studying their patterns, and establishing a network of informants. They're predictable, he told his agents during a secure communication. They move in patterns. Once we understand those patterns, we can exploit them. Back on Earth, factories that once produced civilian goods now worked around the clock making EM pulse generators and retrofitting ships. Colony worlds sent resources and volunteers. For the first time in decades, humanity united with a single purpose. Fleet Captain Ryan Jenkins stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Endeavour, looking at the assembled fleet. 60 ships, the largest force Earth had ever fielded, prepared to jump to faster than light speed. All ships report ready, sir, his first officer said. Ryan nodded. Send a message to the Alliance Command. Tell them, this is Fleet Captain Ryan Jenkins of the United Earth Defense Force. Help is on the way. As the human fleet disappeared into the darkness of space, they carried with them the hopes of not just Earth, but countless worlds across the galaxy. The tide was about to turn. The Void Dominion had never encountered humans before. Reports from their outer scouts about a new species entering the war were analyzed by the hive mind and dismissed. Their vast consciousness calculated a 99.8% probability of total alliance collapse within 3 months. This new variable would not change the outcome. It was a rare miscalculation. The planet Procyon 4 hung in space like a blue-green jewel. Once a thriving world with billions of inhabitants, now its cities burned as Dominion ships swarmed its orbit. The last Alliance defenders fought bravely but hopelessly, their remaining ships forming a protective ring around the evacuation transports. General Zixel of the Centauri watched the battle from the bridge of his command ship. Tall and four-armed, with iridescent skin that now looked dull with exhaustion, he had fought the Dominion for 20 years. He had seen countless worlds fall. Soon, Procyon 4 would join them. "General," his communications officer called. "We're receiving a transmission from an unknown fleet approaching from Sector 7. Zixel frowned. "Dominion reinforcements?" "No, sir. They're identifying themselves as humans." Before Zixel could respond, a woman's face appeared on the main screen. She wore a dark uniform with silver insignia on the collar. "This is Rear Admiral Sophia West of the Earth Defense Fleet vessel Defiance. We're here to help." Zixel stared, in disbelief. "Admiral West, we appreciate your offer, but you should retreat while you can. The Dominion has over 100 ships in this system. We're evacuating the civilian population." Sophia's expression remained calm. "We understand the situation, General. Our intelligence has been monitoring Dominion movements. We have a plan. Continue your evacuation efforts, but hold your position for 10 more minutes." The transmission ended. Zixel looked at his second-in-command. "Humans. They said they were sending help, but what can they do with so few ships? I count only 12 approaching." 10 minutes later, he had his answer. Lieutenant Jack Morrison led the 1st Fighter Squadron into battle. His small, agile craft darted between the massive Dominion ships, which largely ignored them. The Dominion had learned to focus on capital, ships, not fighters that could do little damage to their hulls. "All wings form up," Jack ordered over the comm. "Prepare to deploy EM pulse weapons on my mark." The human fighters moved into formation, surrounding a particularly large cluster of Dominion vessels. Deep in the heart of each fighter, a new type of weapon waited. Not lasers or missiles, but devices designed to broadcast electromagnetic waves at a very specific frequency. 3, 2, 1, mark. The effect was immediate and stunning. As the EM pulse activated, the perfectly coordinated movements of the Dominion ship suddenly faltered. Some stopped completely. Others began moving erratically, colliding with each other. The hive-mind connection that made them so deadly had been disrupted. On the bridge of the Defiance, Rear Admiral West watched the data stream in. "Target the largest vessels with the main pulse array," she ordered, "and signal the ground teams. They're clear to drop." Major Deborah Keller felt the shudder as her dropship entered Procyon's atmosphere. Around her, 20 Marines checked their equipment, one last time. Each carried a modified pulse rifle that would broadcast the same frequency as the fighters above, but on a smaller scale for ground combat. "Remember your training," she told them. "The Dominion ground troops will be disoriented when their connection to the hive is disrupted. That's when we move in. Our priority is securing the civilian evacuation centers." The dropships landed in the burning capital city. As the doors opened, Deborah saw the enemy for the first time. Dominion ground troops weren't machines, as some had speculated, but biological beings, each one once an individual from a conquered species, now altered and connected to the hive mind. "Activate pulse rifles now," she ordered. The effect on the ground was even more dramatic than in space. The Dominion troops, previously moving with perfect coordination, suddenly stopped. Some fell to their knees. Others wandered aimlessly. Few turned on each other in confusion. "Move in. Secure the evacuation centers." Back in space, the battle had taken an unexpected turn. For the first time in 30 years of war, the Dominion fleet was in disarray. Alliance ships, seeing the opportunity, pressed their attack with renewed vigor. Commander Noah Franklin stood on the bridge of his cruiser, intrepid, watching the battle unfold. His ship housed the largest EM pulse array in the human fleet, but to use it effectively, they needed to get closer to the Dominion command vessel. The corridor's closing, his tactical officer warned. If we're going to make a run for it, it has to be now. Noah nodded. All hands, prepare for high-G maneuvers. Engineering, give me everything the engines have. The Intrepid surged forward, diving into the heart of the enemy formation. Dominion ships, still partially connected to their hive mind, turned to intercept this new threat. The human vessel shuddered as enemy fire struck its shields. Shields down to 40%, someone reported. Keep going, Noah ordered. Get us within range of the command ship. The Intrepid took heavy damage as it pushed deeper into the enemy formation. Hull breaches on multiple decks, fires in engineering, but they kept going. We're in range, the weapons officer announced. Activate the main pulse array, full power. The massive EM pulse broadcast from the Intrepid struck the Dominion command vessel like an invisible hammer. The effect cascaded through the remaining enemy ships, breaking their connection completely. What had been a unified fleet became individual vessels with no coordination. On the bridge of his ship, General Zixel watched in amazement as the Dominion forces fell into complete disarray. Alliance ships, working together with the humans, systematically disabled or destroyed the now vulnerable enemy vessels. The evacuation is complete, General, his aide reported. All civilian transports have jumped to safety. And the human vessel that made the run to the command ship? The aide hesitated. The Intrepid is heavily damaged, sir. They're venting atmosphere on multiple decks, but they're still operational. Zixel nodded slowly. Send our best repair teams to assist them. He turned to look at the tactical display, where the remaining Dominion ships were retreating or being captured. And prepare a full report for Alliance High Command. They need to know what happened here. As the battle ended, humanity had announced its arrival on the galactic stage. Alliance, species who had dismissed humans as primitive, now looked to Earth with new hope. The tide had begun to turn. In the medical bay of the Defiance, Jack Morrison sat beside the bed of a wounded Marine from Major Keller's team. The soldier would recover, but many others wouldn't be so fortunate. The victory had come at a cost. Was it worth it? The Marine asked weakly. Jack looked out the viewport at the planet they had saved, where millions of people would now live instead of being consumed by the Dominion. Yes, he said quietly. It was worth it. And this is just the beginning. News of the victory at Procyon IV spread quickly through Alliance space. For the first time in 3 decades, people dared to hope. The unstoppable enemy had been stopped. The invincible Dominion had been defeated. For the next 6 months, Earth worked tirelessly. Every factory, every shipyard, every research facility focused on one goal: winning the war. Chief Engineer Ethan Mills stood in the massive orbital shipyard above Earth, watching as workers assembled new vessels at an incredible pace. Another one ready for fitting, his assistant reported. Ethan nodded, checking the schedule on his tablet. That makes 5 this week. At this rate, we'll have another full battle group ready by next month. Before the war, Earth had built perhaps 10 warships a year. Now, using new mass production techniques that Ethan had pioneered, they were producing that many each week. Alliance representatives visiting the shipyards watched in amazement as hull sections moved along assembly lines, a method no other species had applied to shipbuilding. We need more ships fast, Ethan explained to a visiting Arcturian admiral, so we broke down the process and made it more efficient. The admiral shook his head in wonder. Your people have been isolated for so long, yet you've developed methods we never considered. On the bridge of the flagship Resolution, Admiral Linda Coleman studied the tactical display. The combined Human Alliance fleet had just completed another successful strike against a Dominion supply base. The enemy is adapting, her intelligence officer warned. They're starting to shield their command ships against our EM pulses. Linda wasn't surprised. The Dominion's greatest strength was its ability to learn and evolve. Then we adapt faster, she said. We don't fight the way they expect us to. Under her leadership, Earth forces developed a new strategic doctrine. Instead of engaging in traditional space battles, they formed small, fast-moving task forces that struck Dominion weak points and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. This asymmetrical warfare confused the hive mind, which was accustomed to predictable, conventional conflicts. They think like one giant organism, Linda explained to her captains. They expect logical, direct approaches, so we give them the opposite. The Alliance had fought separately for decades, each species using their own tactics and strategies. The result had been a slow, steady defeat. Now, with Colonel Samuel Wright leading a new training program, Alliance officers learned Earth military doctrine. Unity gives us strength. Sam told a class of alien officers from 6 different species. We need to fight as one force, not 20 separate armies. In the beginning, there was resistance. Many species had proud military traditions dating back thousands of years. They didn't want to adopt human methods. But as victories mounted, resistance faded. In his laboratory on Earth, Dr. Aaron Phillips worked with a team of scientists from both human and Alliance worlds. They had moved beyond the basic EM-pulse technology to something more sophisticated. The problem with the current pulses is range, Aaron explained to a visiting admiral. They only disrupt the hive mind within a limited area. We need something that can affect entire systems. His team had developed what they called an EM-pulse beacon. When deployed, it could disrupt Dominion communications across huge distances, preventing reinforcements from coordinating their movements. The first prototypes are ready for field testing, Aaron said. Now we need a way to place them deep in enemy territory. That job fell to Lieutenant Alicia Morgan and the crew of the Nightshade. Their ship was unlike any other in the human fleet, painted matte black with special hull materials that absorbed rather than reflected sensor scans. It was nearly invisible to enemy detection systems. Final check complete, Alicia announced from the captain's chair. Stealth systems at maximum. We're ready to jump. The Nightshade's mission was simple but incredibly dangerous. Slip behind enemy lines, plant the new EM-pulse beacons, and get out without being detected. If they succeeded, they would disrupt Dominion operations across multiple sectors. If they failed, they would likely never return. The first jump took them to the edge of Dominion space. The second placed them deep in enemy territory. Alicia held her breath as they passed within sensor range of a Dominion patrol. The stealth systems worked. The enemy ships continued on their course without changing speed or direction. Over the next week, the Nightshade planted beacons at key locations throughout Dominion space. Each one was carefully hidden and programmed to activate simultaneously. Last beacon placed, Alicia's first officer reported. Ready to head home? Alicia nodded, feeling the weight of the past week lift from her shoulders. Definitely. Let's get out of here before our luck runs out. The Nightshade made it safely back to Alliance space. 3 days later, the beacons activated. Across 20 star systems, the Dominion hive mind connection suddenly fragmented. It was like cutting the strings of a puppet. Ships lost coordination. Bases could not communicate with each other, and carefully planned operations fell apart. Alliance and human forces, prepared for this moment, launched simultaneous attacks on key Dominion strongholds. The once mighty enemy found itself fighting multiple battles without the ability to coordinate its responses. On the occupied world of Tau Ceti II, resistance had been growing for months. Michelle Simmons, a civilian engineer stranded there when the planet fell, had organized the survivors into an effective guerrilla force. They sabotaged Dominion equipment, stole supplies, and gathered intelligence on enemy movements. When Captain Jason Bryant's Marines landed on the outskirts of the main city, Michelle was waiting for them with detailed maps and information. Half the work is already done, she told the surprised captain. The Northern District is under our control, and we've disabled their main power grid. Jason studied the woman with newfound respect. We thought we were coming to liberate a conquered world. Looks like you started without us. Michelle smiled grimly. We never stopped fighting. We just needed a little help to finish the job. The liberation of Tau Ceti II became a model for operations on other occupied worlds. Human forces working together with local resistance fighters freed planet after planet. The Dominion, for the first time in its existence, began to retreat. In the vast consciousness of the Void Dominion's hive mind, a new sensation emerged. something the collective had never experienced before: fear. The final battle took shape around the Deneb system. Deep inside this remote region of space orbited a massive structure called the Nexus, the heart of the Void Dominion. Built around a dying star, it housed the central consciousness that controlled the vast hive mind. For 3 years, Alliance intelligence had searched for this location. Now they had found it. The combined fleets of humanity and the Alliance gathered at the edge of the system. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Over 1,000 ships from 30 different species, all united, under one command. Admiral Caroline Reed stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Resolution, looking at the holographic display of the assembled forces. 3 years ago, she had been a junior officer. Now she commanded this historic operation. "The Dominion knows we're coming," her intelligence officer reported. "They've called back every available ship to defend the Nexus." Caroline nodded. She had expected nothing less. "Send the signal to all ships. Operation Turning Tide is now active." Throughout the fleet, captains received their final orders. Years of fighting together had created a unity that once seemed impossible. Humans and aliens now worked side by side, each bringing their unique strengths to the battle. Lieutenant Victor Ramirez checked his equipment one last time. His mission was perhaps the most critical and dangerous of the entire operation. While the main fleet engaged the Dominion forces, a small team would infiltrate the Nexus itself and deploy an advanced EM pulse device at its core. "Everyone, ready?" he asked, looking around at his team. Besides himself, there were 5 others, each from a different Alliance species: a Centauri engineer, an Arcturian navigator, a Rigelian explosives expert, a Procyon medic, and a Tau Ceti communications specialist. Such cooperation would have been unimaginable before humanity's arrival. "Ready as we'll ever be," said Kellis, the Centauri engineer. "Let's end this war." Their small, heavily modified stealth ship detached from the Resolution and moved toward the Nexus, using the chaos of battle as cover. The main fleet divided into attack groups, each with a specific target. The battle plan, developed by Admiral Reed and her staff, was unlike anything the Dominion had faced before. Instead of a direct assault, the Allied forces used complex maneuvers that seemed chaotic, but were actually precisely coordinated. "They're trying to predict our movements," Caroline said, watching the enemy formations adjust. "But we're not following any pattern they've seen before." The Dominion forces were still formidable. Despite all the victories of the past 3 years, the enemy had adapted, developing partial shields against EM pulse weapons and new tactics of their own. Ships on both sides took heavy damage as energy weapons and missiles filled space with deadly light. Commander Patricia Doyle's cruiser Dauntless fought on the front lines, protecting a group of Alliance medical ships that were picking up survivors from damaged vessels. When a Dominion heavy destroyer broke through the defensive line and headed straight for the vulnerable medical ships, Patricia made a split-second decision. "Intercept course," she ordered. "Full power to forward shields." The Dauntless moved to place itself between the enemy and the medical ships. The Dominion destroyer fired its main weapons, striking the human vessel with devastating force. Alarms blared as systems failed across the ship. "Shields failing," her tactical officer reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Patricia held tight to her chair as the ship shuddered around her. "Hold position. The medical ships need time to escape." The Dauntless took hit after hit, buying precious minutes for the medical ships to reach safety. By the time they were clear, the human cruiser was critically damaged, its engines dead, life support failing. "Abandon ship," Patricia ordered. "All hands to escape pods." As her crew evacuated, Patricia stayed on the bridge, using the Dauntless's remaining weapons to keep the enemy's attention fixed on her ship rather than the fleeing medical vessels. Her sacrifice allowed thousands of wounded to escape destruction. Inside the Nexus, Victor Ramirez and his team fought their way through automated defense systems and Dominion guards. The structure was vast and maze-like, its walls made of a strange, shifting material that seemed almost alive. "The central chamber should be just ahead," the Arcturian navigator said, checking a holographic map they had compiled from intelligence reports. The team had started with 6, now only 3 remained. The Rigelian and the Tau Ceti had fallen during a firefight 2 levels back. The Procyon medic had been lost when a section of corridor collapsed. As they approached the central chamber, Dominion resistance increased. Victor was hit in the shoulder by enemy fire, the wound deep and painful. Kellis, the Centauri engineer, took a more serious hit to the chest. "I can't go on," Kellis said, leaning against a wall, blue blood seeping between his 4 hands. "You, 2, go ahead. I'll hold them off here." Victor wanted to argue, but there was no time. He and the Arcturian continued forward while Kellis used the last of his strength to cover their retreat. The central chamber was a vast spherical space. At its center floated a pulsing crystalline object the size of a small ship. The physical manifestation of the Dominion's central consciousness, that's it, Victor said. "That's what we came for." They moved forward, the Arcturian carrying the specialized EM pulse device they had brought. But as they approached, a final wave of Dominion guards attacked. The Arcturian fell, mortally wounded, but managed to push the device into Victor's hands. "Finish it," he gasped. Wounded and alone, Flight Officer Kyle Bennett, the last survivor of Ramirez's team, limped to the center of the chamber. The Dominion guards were closing in. The pulse device was damaged, its automated timer destroyed. There was only one way to activate it now. Kyle placed the device directly against the crystalline consciousness and manually activated the sequence. The device would detonate in 30 seconds, not enough time to escape. "For Earth," he whispered. "For all of us." The resulting pulse destroyed the Dominion's central consciousness in a cascade of energy. Throughout the galaxy, assimilated beings were suddenly freed as the hive mind collapsed. The war that had seemed unwinnable was over. In the aftermath, humanity took its place as a full member of a reformed galactic alliance. The species that had once kept to themselves had saved the galaxy. At the victory celebration on Earth, Admiral Soren Valdez, whose desperate escape had been the prologue to humanity's involvement, raised a toast. To the species who arrived when all seemed lost and turned the tide for us all. A new era of galactic cooperation had begun, with humanity at its center. The isolation that had once been Earth's policy had, ironically, developed the unique perspective and technology that saved the galaxy. Together, the united species looked to the future with hope, ready to rebuild what had been lost and create something greater than had existed before.